so much of burnout is we don't feel like we have connections, deep connections, people we could be honest with. So we don't want to put those needs on them. And if you hold back from telling someone where you're vulnerable or where you are struggling, then they can't really get close to you. And if you think about it, you're not being completely honest with them.
This is episode number 617 with Mary Jo Rapini. She is a returning guest. We love her so much. We're having her back. I've been on her Instagram live, and that was really fun. So we hopefully will do that again soon. But we're going to talk today about an important topic, which is how to prevent burnout in long-term relationships. This is something that happens a lot. People don't know what to do when they get burnout. So Mary Jo is going to help us with that in just a moment. But I wanted to first welcome you back to Last First Date Radio, where we believe it is never too late to go on your last first date. And to support you on that journey, I've written 2 books. The first is Becoming a Woman of Value, How to Thrive in Life and Love. And this book is really about anybody who wants to value themselves more. To me, the most important thing is how we feel about ourselves, how we show up in the world. And this book has 30 tips on how to do that. I'm going to share one of them in a minute. And the second book is Choice Points in Dating. This book came out last year. I wrote this book as really a guidebook for all the choices that we do have when it comes to dating and relationships. We often feel we are not a choice. We feel that we don't have a lot of choices. And I'm here to say that we do. And I go through everything from how to even think about dating, which is a big part of it, the mindset we bring to dating, to who we date, how we make first date conversations, how we date online, offline, and how we know whether it's our last first date or not. You can find both of these books on Amazon for Kindle or paperback, and Choice Points is also available as an audiobook on Audible. This week's tip from the Woman of Value book is step number 24, which is practice saying no. And we often say no to the wrong things and yes to the wrong things. And I want to kind of clarify what I mean by practice saying no. I want you to say no to things that drain your energy, things that are crossing your boundaries, things that don't align with things that are important to you. And every time we say yes to those things, we're basically being a people pleaser. We're draining our own energy. And it's not good for us, but it's also not good for the people we're with. I mean, if you've ever been friends with a people pleaser who says, oh, we're going to get together next week because they want to make you happy, or I'm going to call you right back, and they never do, but they're afraid to say no, or they're afraid to say nothing. And we want to be with people who are honest with us. And so if you tend to do this, practice saying no. Before I bring Mary Jo on, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my Facebook group. It's called Your Last First Date. And we are one of the only groups out there who is heavily monitored. We believe, or I created incredible guidelines for this group so that we have boundaries, which I think is important, whether we're in a dating group or we're in life. And this group is really for positive support in your dating journey. Many people get into relationships, get married, and stay in the group because it is such a wonderful place to talk about everything that has to do with dating, relationships with your family sometimes come up, with your children, stepchildren, blending families. Everything goes on in this group. And so if you're looking for support, come join us at Your Last First Date. And now for my returning guest, Mary Jo Rapini. She is a leading psychotherapist. She specializes in intimacy, sex, and relationships. She's based in Houston, Texas, and she operates a private practice there dedicated to providing exceptional services as a relationship and intimacy sex psychotherapist. Welcome back to the podcast, Mary Jo.
Thank you for having me, Sandy. I love your platform and just everything that you entail and have created. I mean, I'm really proud of you. It's come a
Oh,
long, long way.
Thank you so much. And
Mhm.
you have such great content out there. You're just always
Oh, thank
giving
you.
great material to people. Really solid, really grounded. So today we're going to talk about a topic we don't talk about a lot, which is relationship burnout. So what does cause relationship burnout?
Well, I think it's like all types of burnout with the inability to set really strong boundaries or firm boundaries and then respect those. So many times, I think women especially, we have a tendency to keep doing. Even when we're tired, we tell ourselves, oh, I can do one more thing, or, I don't want to get in a big fight about this or conflict. It's not that big of a deal. And before we know it, we're acting and words are coming out of our mouth that are making us even more committed in something that we know in our hearts we just don't have the energy or desire to do.
So we're overcommitted, overworked. We say yes
Yeah,
when we mean no,
yes.
and it builds resentment. I mean, I've
Mhm.
seen not only burnout, but people are exhausted. They are feeling contempt towards each other because they've taken on
Mhm.
too much. And then they say, well, I do everything and they do nothing.
Right.
And right. So you've probably seen a lot of
Mhm.
that in your practice.
Yes, and I think, for those people that are dating, they're on the dating apps, it's especially, it's overwhelming because you have to keep up with it. You have a tendency if something is new that you don't want to let somebody else down. And I think the whole concept of dating, it's the whole concept is built on bringing your best self to the table. And if you're burned out from work, you're burned out from life, you just get a feeling you don't care anymore. That's really hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important to be clear with what you need and
Mhm.
want.
Mhm.
So let's talk about the who's responsible for all this. Like I know you just mentioned women tend to say yes to a lot of things they don't
Mhm.
mean, but yeah, like
Right.
what else is behind the scenes here?
Well, I think it's, women's not advocating for their boundaries, but I also think it's expectations. And those are both men and women and our bosses and our kids and anybody in our family, our loved one. Many times we're called the sandwich generation because we're in between taking care of our parents or taking care of perhaps kids from another relationship. And we're in the middle and we get what's left over. It's this idea of you get what's left over and then your partner gets even less because they get what's left over of you. And then they take that as being the real you.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think that
Mhm.
we're not trained to be caregivers. We don't really know
Mhm.
what's entailed in caregiving.
Mhm.
And so with aging parents, and I think that's very common for a lot of people who are
Yeah.
listening to this podcast, that we start giving too much. I just got an email from a client who has been going to take care of both her parents who are failing.
Mhm.
And she said her father has been getting aggressive and kind
Mhm.
of really difficult to be around. And then if you are the only sibling who's helping out, you get resentful of that. And so boundaries, knowing what your limits are. I mean, I remember when my father needed to go into assisted living, I would not take him in because I knew I couldn't do that. It just wouldn't
Mhm.
have worked at all for me. I would have ended up so burnt out, so
Mhm.
completely overwhelmed. He had mental illness. He could not live with me.
Yeah.
And in the end, he thrived in the assisted living. It took a while. He was really
Yeah.
depressed. But I had a cousin who called me and said, you really should take in your father. You're wrong. And I said, excuse me, but you're not his daughter. And you
Right.
don't have a right to tell me how to live. And
Mhm.
so, like, I don't talk to this person anymore. But, it's like everybody's going
Right.
to give you advice about how to live your life, right?
Mhm. And you have to be so brave. That was very brave of you. But one of my things is I ask people, what do you feel obligated? And it's incredible, Sandy. I mean, that word is very poignant because it seems like people who get burned out, they have a lot of things that they prioritize as obligations. And if you just sit down and you calm yourself, what's really what's really under your jurisdiction of obligation is usually not that much, and it shouldn't be. In fact, you don't want a life where you have all sorts of obligations. You want a life that has a few obligations to keep you going, to keep you interested and thriving, but not so many that you just can't exist, that you can't have a life at all. And I think that's the problem for many who are trying to deal with their older parents and they're still dating. They have a life too. You have to be brave enough to say, you know what? I can't do this. It's sad, but your parents had a life. They got to live. And when they're older and they need extra care, to enable them by taking them in and allowing them to further decline, but in your care is almost, I would say, it's on the other side. It's like not only a bad decision for your parents, but it's a bad decision for you too.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't consider that. They feel
Yeah.
guilty and the parents are
Mhm.
putting it on them, which isn't fair.
Mhm.
And it does take courage to speak up and set limits, but it's
Mhm.
preserving your own dignity and your own sense of
Yes.
self and the
Mhm.
relationships that you have with other people.
Exactly.
I mean, I think this comes into play also with people who have grown children who are living with them
Mhm.
and they're starting new relationships. I have a client who has a daughter who still lives at home because she has some developmental disabilities.
Mhm.
And he talked to me in the beginning about how to present that to a girlfriend, to
Mhm.
somebody he's going to be dating. And so what would you suggest to somebody who is caretaking somebody at home and doesn't want to have burnout in a relationship because they're
Right.
trying to be everything for everyone?
Well, it depends where the dating is. Like if it's a new date, I think it would be more stressful. I don't think you'll be able to represent yourself as well as you could if this person was someone who knew you. But I really like transparency and honesty. And also, you need to be really brave and make a boundary for that daughter. Maybe you were in the past able to do a lot of the things, but when children get older, especially when they're young adults, they need they need care from someone that is not a parent or not a loved one. They need care from an objective person because usually people who come in, or if they're at a facility, those people are going to be better at motivating them. They don't coddle them and they don't say, but you don't understand. They've never been able to do this. They push them. And I think as parents, we get stuck in that. Like we love our kids and there's a strong dependence, sometimes not on the child's part, but on our part of letting go. I tell every person who is dating, you deserve to be loved, to find love, and to enjoy love. So it's important that you prioritize that, and that gets equal parts of you as caring for someone else.
Yeah, that's such an important message. I totally
Mhm.
agree with you. We had this question come up in my private Facebook group where a woman who was widowed is dating really for the first time since her husband died. She has a teenage son
Mhm.
and she's wondering how to balance and should she be dating and how can she be dating
Mhm.
and I have always told people who are widowed that you want to model healthy relationships for your child, especially if it's a
Yeah.
teenager. Like this kid is not talking to her about his relationships. They don't have that kind of relationship yet. And I think it's just so important to show your child that you're not replacing their father,
Mhm.
but that you are you want to be in love again and that you want them to be in love as well. And you want to model that. And yeah, so do you have any advice for people who are widowed, who are afraid to get out there again and the messages that they'll send their children?
Right. Well, I think there's a lot of pressure, especially when you are a widow, because you've gone through a huge loss and you don't, like, you go through a period where you really don't know who you are without this other person. So there's a pressure to start dating right away. But I really encourage widows to start out by dating themselves. If you've been married for a long time, you become such a pair. You know what your other partner used to do, and you embrace that. But was that really who you were? Like, many of them don't even know their favorite color or their favorite spice or little intricate things about themselves. They can't remember the last time they were able to just be free and, go on a hike in the woods by themselves. And if they're capable and if they can, I really love when widows will take that time. And I usually say 6 months to a year of just dating yourself. Where would you like to go? For some of us, that's going to be going to a place that has music, their choice of wine, and just reading a book or putting a puzzle together. And there's great places like that. Maybe you don't want to talk to anybody. Maybe you just want to, rent a Airbnb and go somewhere you've always wanted to go or used to go with your partner. And now it's just you and figuring out who that person is. But when you start dating, I work in line with the medical communities in Houston, and they've seen an incredible jump in widows' immune system because we are connected, whether we want to deny it or not. We are connected, and our whole body and our brain resonates when we're feeling love from someone, when we're feeling connected, emotional intimacy. So that's an important part of restarting your life again. There is life after death of a partner. It's just, you don't have to feel guilty about being happy again and being loved again. I think we punish ourselves with guilt a lot.
Oh, yeah. About everything, right?
Yes, about everything. And when we allow guilt to take over, it will lead to resentment, which can lead to burnout. Just feeling like, there's no joy in life.
Yeah, and it's no fun to have a partner who's not joyous anymore.
That's right.
So, yeah,
That's right.
but
And you want to bring your joyous self to dating.
yeah,
If, it's not attractive to go out with someone who is resentful and bitter about their past.
let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Music Unlimited. You can listen to over 70 million songs and thousands of playlists and stations. Plus, you can now stream your favorite podcasts, like Last First Date Radio. You can listen to any song, anytime, anywhere, on any of your devices. Get Amazon Music Unlimited for free for 30 days. Just head on over to getamazonmusic.com/lastfirstdate to learn more and claim this offer. People get burnt out in the dating world. They get burnt out in relationships. I mean, people get burnt out on everything. I think the burnout that happens in dating is when you're not being intentional when you're dating and you're just kind of haphazardly dating the wrong people, staying too long in the wrong relationships, and you just give up. And my third book, which is at the editor right now, is about people who actually found love later in life. It's to give people hope. And it's true stories of people who were living lives that were wonderful already. And they all share like the little tips that got them there, which I think is so important for people because it is so easy to give up and to say it's just not meant for me and I'm going to give up. and I'm just going to stay home and do nothing.
Yeah.
And that's not good for you. It's just
Mhm.
not good to be alone. I mean, if you do want a relationship, it makes you healthier to be with the
Oh,
right people.
absolutely. It's so good. I have a client and she's 64 and she's getting married and her whole family is like, why are you doing that again? Why, you got everything you need. Why would you want to do that? And she said, I want to marry again because I want a lifetime partner. I want someone to enjoy sites with me and travel with me and be my companion. And I want a partner for my health. And I think men have really understood that for a long time, but I don't think women have. And if we have, and perhaps it's because women allow themselves to get more burned out in relationships than men do. Men will say enough. Men will prioritize what's important. Chores aren't important. But if the two of you align and you say, these are important chores, we have to divvy these up, then I think it's beautiful being married. I think you can create a relationship you really love, one that you won't be taken advantage of. And in fact, in my clientele, Sandy, more times than not, the second relationship was better than the
Mhm.
first one.
Yeah, and it depends on a lot of things. Obviously,
Yes,
you've got to do the work
yeah,
so you don't keep repeating patterns, and
exactly.
but there can be an amazing mature relationship the second time around, especially if your
Mhm.
kids are grown, if you've already kind of finished that part of your life, and now you're looking for companionship and you're looking for a friend. And I think priorities change. I know for me,
Yeah.
I got married the first time to have children, really to start a family, to have children. Had no idea what I was doing, as most people don't.
None of
You
us
kind of
did.
make it up along the way. You realize all the deficits you
Yeah,
have, and oh my
yeah,
God, your children show you all the flaws you have.
yeah,
But it's the greatest thing in the world that I have grown children and grandchildren and a full life. I have a
yeah.
happy life, and so people who are living a good life and have gone out and dated themselves, as you say, they're bringing a joyous partnership to the partnership. They're bringing that part of the partnership.
And I think, I don't know how you feel about this or your followers, but I think social media contributes to burnout. I think it's urgent. It's the design of it to make itself urgent. And so it's hard to resist that. But resisting social media, and especially if you're using dating apps, which I believe the majority of people are, and I have no problem with them. But I do think then it's important that you take breaks, that you step away from it, that you're really in control of limiting the amount of time you're on them. Because it is really difficult on anxiety disorders, on depression disorders, and it's a culprit with burnout.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. In fact, I tell my clients no more than 20 minutes a day. Like
I
put a
like
timer on. Yeah.
that's a
Otherwise, you get caught up in the whole thing. And then you also turn off notifications. So
oh,
you're
that's
not constantly checking your phone or your watch or wherever you're getting notifications. It's like that's anxiety inducing too.
Mhm.
And it's like you don't have to answer texts every minute that they come in and messaging. And but let's go back to some of the questions. You mentioned that couples should ask each other certain questions. You mentioned one, which is, what do you feel obligated to do? And
Mhm.
then looking at that list of obligations on a regular basis and saying, okay, well, those are not that important. Like you said, men don't prioritize chores. Like,
Mhm.
what can you let go of? Does your house have to look perfect? Did you take
Exactly.
care of yourself? So what are some other questions that couples can ask each other?
Are we strong enough to really like emotionally support each other? Like, are we both being transparent? Are like, am I loving you well? Are there things that I can do more to make you feel supported? I think those kinds of things can help us know. So much of burnout is we don't feel like we have connections, deep connections, people we could be honest with. So we don't want to put those needs on them. And if you hold back from telling someone where you're vulnerable or where you are struggling, then they can't really get close to you. And if you think about it, you're not being completely honest with them because you're holding back the very part of you that they could love, that they could be of service and help you.
Yeah, I think the communication piece is so important, and to the check-in,
Yeah.
checking in with each other. We might assume that the person is doing well when we don't know because we haven't asked. Yeah. So how often do you think people should ask these questions?
I think every week or at least once every 2 weeks, depending on your relationship and how much you're seeing them. If it's a relationship that's been long-term and you've been together, I think a weekly check-in. What can I do to help you feel less stressed? What could I do to make you feel more loved? If it's a newer relationship, I think being honest with them about you're going to have to be more upfront. And maybe you could start by saying, when you said this to me, I felt so supported. And I want you to know I really appreciated that. Because most of the time we worry about big deals, like when to say I love you, or how to say, I need space or I need a break. But it's these little things that we do and we kind of make like a relationship habit with, if you will, that really does tighten the relationship and make it stronger, I believe.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I think so many couples just don't talk about these things at all. I mean, I've seen burnout in young couples with the small children, because that's one of the hardest times when there are a million obligations, kids need a lot of support. And then older couples who have older children who are also in need of support. And then we talked about the parents, taking care of your parents. Also, when jobs are not going well, when people have stress on any level. And if we're not talking about it, we're not
Yeah.
supporting each other, and we don't know how to support each other.
And I don't know if any of your followers talk about this, but it is a big deal with my followers, especially the ones who are dating. They say that body image is a big deal, that they feel burned out about just, and this is where we get into social media. They're intimate with this person. They start, going down this rabbit hole. Am I thin enough? Am I good enough? And when you look at some of the influencers, many of them are on Ozempic or a new weight loss drug. They're getting paid to do that, to influence people with that. And it can really mess up your mind. And before you know it, just the thought of having to work out, of not being accepted for who you are, of having to worry about how your body may appear naked, it causes a real sense of defeat. And you just want to stop. And pretty soon you just go, especially if you get one date that, they go out with you once and then they're done. It's very easy to go where your shame is, to follow your shame, and it may come to a body image place.
Yeah. I mean, body image is huge for so many people. It's a whole other podcast, but
yeah,
I agree with you. And especially as we age, and women who are postmenopausal, who their bodies have changed. I mean, I see these posts all the time in my Facebook group too about I gained 20 pounds over COVID. I don't feel like I look good enough to date. I will not be accepted by the men I date. And it's such a shame because it's preventing you from dating, but it's also, you're associating your worth with 20 pounds,
right.
or 10 pounds or 5 pounds or 3 wrinkles or a gray hair or anything that is part of the aging process. I just watched a documentary on Diane von Furstenberg, and she talks about aging in such a beautiful way that she said, I don't like to say I'm aging well. I like to say I'm living well. And
Mm.
she's like, why are we all trying to stop aging? She's so proud
Right.
of the life she's lived and all the things she's done and the voice that she found in her world
Mhm.
because she lived without having a voice for so long. And here she is, this famous woman who was an incredible designer, and she's such a good role model for so many people. So, she's older. She's in her late 70s, she's very wrinkled. She didn't have any facelifts that you can see. Like it's
That's
just,
beautiful. I mean,
yeah.
I admire those women because they give me strength. And
Hmm.
I've encouraged my followers when they put on their profile and they're over the age of 50, I will say, put in your profile, you're appreciating a partner who has a wide idea of beauty. So if
Mm.
they're narrow focused on beauty, they don't need to ask you out because you like to think of yourself as having a variety of beauty, of beautiful aspects. And you don't want to be pigeonholed by somebody who's so narrow. They need blonde, a certain height, a certain weight. Those things won't matter anyway. What that person is basically telling you is, I'm not going to stick around. And if that's what you're going for, no worries. But if you want a relationship, everybody knows the longer it goes, the more incredibly fascinating it becomes and the
Mhm.
more rich it is. So look for someone who right away is going to be someone who can keep your mind active and someone who is going to present adventure in your life rather than something dull that you end up feeling used and taken advantage of.
Yeah, well, those are the things that lead to burnout, right? So,
Oh, absolutely. They
yeah.
sure do. And the thoughts of them, I think, more than anything, it's the thoughts. I do a daily clean out every day. Like in my own life, I write a list every morning and then I read it at night and I write down 3 priorities for that day. So it changes every day. It always has move. I think movement is very important. That is always one of them. But I don't depict what kind of movement. I only put down, I need at least an hour of movement in here. And if I get an hour of movement, according to most of the physicians I work with, I will be happy. I will be healthy. So many people don't walk at all. An hour of movement, even if it's walking to your car, walking up and down stairs, whatever it is, that's going to be really good for you. And
Yeah.
that's going to help the brain so that anything else you're dealing with, you're going to be able to work through, hopefully preventing burnout.
I so agree. I mean, I'm in the gym every day now.
Yeah.
I absolutely love taking Pilates and yoga and
Mhm.
Zumba and kickboxing and all kinds of things. Plus, I walk. I'm moving most of the day,
Yeah.
so
Oh, that's
I'm
lovely.
I love it. I love it. I love how it makes my body feel, but I like how it makes my mind feel. Like you said, it's so good for our brains for
Mhm.
increasing serotonin and all the important chemicals in our
Yeah.
brains.
Hmm.
Um, so Mary Jo, so much good advice here. I would love to hear your final words of advice for anyone who wants to go on their last first date.
Well, I think the most important person in all of this is so much of life you can't control. So, but you have control over the things that matter most. And what matters most is what you feel about yourself. When I work mostly with men, and their number one aphrodisiac or sexual attraction, they tell me, is how a woman feels about herself. If a woman loves herself, she's going to make a fantastic partner because no matter what happens, it will not interfere with her boundaries to protect herself and take care of herself. And at the end of the day, I truly believe that is the most important thing that manifests in relationships.
I couldn't agree more. I think that we often try to source our happiness from other people. It's a big issue for a lot of people getting into relationships to sort of complete them. And that is a big mistake. We need to come with a happy, joyous life and to create that. And whatever that is to us, and I certainly am attracted to people who are living their best life, it radiates from them. And people who are doing something good in the world, who are filling their life with something meaningful. It doesn't have to be that you found the biggest passion in the world, but fill your life with joy, and it radiates out of you, and it will attract a partner who will be worthy of you. So I think that's great advice. And Mary Jo, how can people find you? Give us one link and I'll have all the rest of them on the show notes.
Oh, thank you. The biggest one is my website, Mary Jo, and that's J-O, and then rapini.com. I have a YouTube channel and I have some enhancement exercises and little things that people can download that I think are really important in building a relationship. But Sandy, I have to say, you absolutely are glowing with your best life. So I just want to say I have no doubt if I were to meet you at a party, you are someone I would want to go near. And, when we talk about burnout, we talk about someone who loses that and they want to get away from themselves. So they fill it with other stuff. And that's what we really want to try and prevent, or if it's happening, minimize it and get it back on track.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words, and you
I
are
mean,
wonderful. I
you
appreciate
are
it.
just over the top. So
Thank you. Well, as always, I love having you on. I can't wait to be back on your Instagram
yes,
live, and
yes.
we'll do another one soon. I think the last one was about boundaries or how to argue, how to fight fair. I think we did something on that. All good topics, all important topics. Thank you so much, Mary Jo, for coming to the show today. Thanks, everybody, for listening. If you love our show, please give us a rating, a high rating on Apple Podcasts, and share the podcast with your friends. And as always, here's to your last first date. If you are ready to get unstuck, gain new tools, become more empowered, and finally find your last first date, I'd love to talk to you. Fill out an application to be considered for a complimentary half-hour love breakthrough session at lastfirstdate.com/application.